Yeah, we're live. Hi, everyone. There's already some people in the comments. I see. Hi.
Hi, guys. It's always fun to have that moment where it's like, has Jean pressed the live button or are we just waving to ourselves?
Honestly, like, it will happen one day. It will happen one day.
Professional YouTubers.
We have Chicago,
Wow.
Finland. I love seeing where people are right now. All different time zones. Amazing.
Yeah, it's really funny because we're now all in Scotland. That's
Yes!
very strange now.
Ashley's never in a different time zone, though. I guess I should actually say, oh, hi, Simon. Hi. We've got Netherlands represented. Love it. Just to mention, if any of you aren't familiar with Leanne of Literary Diversions here on YouTube, and Ashley of A Frolic Through Fiction. That one always, like, Ashley, could you come up with a more tongue-twisting, like, username? To be honest, I particularly, obviously love Leanne and Ashley, but I particularly wanted to have them here today to sort of, like, chat about the book because it was at their urging in part. Yeah, the encouragement very much got me to the place I am right now. Like, I'm not sure we'd be here with my book coming out tomorrow if it were not for Leanne and Ashley's encouragement. So
we put our foot down with a heavy hand.
Into it.
Very grateful for the friendly bullying, we'll call it. The friendly bullying.
When is the sequel?
Oh, don't you dare. You can, January 1st, you can send me that WhatsApp message.
Okay, fair. I will have it stored in my notes on my phone until January 1st, though. A reminder, Billie Jean.
I do have ideas for book 2, but book 1, no one's even read book 1 yet. Well, most people haven't read book 1 yet. Okay, so I guess a couple of things I should mention. Welcome to my virtual book launch for the Flames. I do have coffee. I can
party poppers.
We're so not prepared. I don't even have the book yet, but it's coming for Friday.
To be honest, this came today. So this is like the final copy. It came today, so this is actually.
I should have taken the dust jacket off of a hardcover and been like, look at my exclusive galley edition.
You guys had the Word file, so there you go. That was the exclusive e-galley.
Right on it.
Exactly. You've heard all of the ins and the outs and the ups and the downs. So yeah, that's out tomorrow, and I will note because throughout this whole process, obviously people have been asking, where can you buy it from? It is now available in all the places that you can buy it for now. Yeah. So you can, I have them all linked down below. You can have e-copies ordered from Kindle, Kobo, and Nook, all of which will be sent directly to your device tonight at 12 a.m. midnight when the clock turns, and it is technically the 2nd of September, or of course if you buy after.
To me.
And you can buy physical copies. If you're in the US, you can use Barnes & Nobles. Nobody else can use Barnes & Nobles because Barnes & Nobles don't ship anywhere else. But if you are in the US, you can. And then for worldwide shipping, you've got Amazon and Lulu. So both of those are available. They're all down below. Physical books, ebooks, all now available, all linked down below. I feel like I just need to clear that up because there's been lots of here's a new link, here's a new link, here's a new link. For now, that's
all in one place.
And then it's not on Book Depository, even though it's on Amazon and they're the same company, but whatever. It may eventually be in other places, including in person or other online bookshops. But for now, that is everywhere. I will update you in future times if anything else happens with it. But for a little while, at least, those are the only places it's available.
Just in case anybody's kind of rocked up, not really knowing what's going on, tell us about your book.
Yes.
Why are we here? What's your book about? Tell us about the
Give
dragon.
us the elevator pitch.
Very blurb? Like, is that lazy? Or should I actually sum it up myself?
You
I mean,
wrote
you
it.
wrote the blurb, yes. So like, technically not lazy.
I wrote the blurb, so I'll read the blurb and then maybe clarify a few points. So a century since the monarchy was overthrown, the country of Albion has become a haven for its citizens, the young scholar Adaria included. Raised within the Albion University walls, she has dedicated her life to the pursuit of knowledge. Preferring to hole up in the library than seek adventure elsewhere, she has grown accustomed to her comfortable routine. Until the day everything changes. When she unwittingly awakens a sleeping dragon's egg, Adaria is thrust into unfamiliar territory. Never having dreamed of dragons, she is forced to seek out guidance from the exhilarating Isla, last direct descendant of the royal family and companion to a centuries-old dragon. Together, they must navigate the surprises to come, for beyond the prospect of a newborn dragon, Albion is about to face a dangerous conspiracy that threatens the peace of their realm. Flames of Albiyon is a story of friendship, love, and acceptance that celebrates queer identity.
Woo!
I can't take it seriously, to be perfectly honest. I know it's not even my first book, technically. It's my second book, but it's... I don't feel very serious. It's very difficult.
And how many drafts did you do of that blurb before you got to that blurb?
Well, it's funny, actually. I think the first time I sat down to write a blurb was actually an adaptation of like a pitch for the book that I'd written, and I was like, I'll adapt it to be a blurb, and then I sent it to you guys, and you guys were like, this needs to change. And I was like,
Just like,
In the gentlest way possible.
Offensive, or like, this is just more just like, it would make more sense, or this would have more impact, and that was very helpful. I think friend Jen also read it and made a couple changes, and then on the last proof I sent for before the final copy, it actually had a spelling mistake in it, so that final change was also made when my mum's friend pointed that out. I'd spelled Albion wrong. So that was good. That was really good.
No. That would have been bad. There have been so many ways, though, that this has been a learning curve, right?
God. Guys, like, I'm sure a lot of people knowing that, and a lot of people watching know that I've worked in publishing for a long time now in different ways, in-house and as a freelancer. And I definitely think that helps if you're going into the world of self-publishing. Like, I definitely had a background that was very helpful to getting started. It was like a little foot up of knowledge, but it was still so much more than even I realized I was going to have to learn and get to grips with. Oh my goodness. It is like doing the job of an entire publishing house yourself, and learning a lot about publishing that's actually quite, like, because the way you publish is quite different from the way a publishing house publishes. So it's also what you necessarily know about a publishing house doesn't necessarily apply to self-publishing. So then it's also unlearning things and learning new things. And it's...
I have to say, like, anybody who knows Jean, like, as a friend, knows that there's no point in sending Jean any kind of message after like 9 o'clock at night, because you ain't going to get a reply. But I have never received so many late night messages from you being like, guess what I learned about ISBN numbers today? It was a whole journey.
Oh my God, don't even. Did you know, do you want a fun fact about ISBN numbers? There are such things. All countries across the world, you have to buy ISBN numbers. They're not free. So if you're a publishing house, you have to buy your ISBN numbers as well, but you'll buy them in bulk, which makes them cheaper. Except Canada. ISBN numbers are free in Canada. So if you live in Canada, go self-publish your books.
I mean, if we needed any more evidence that everything is better in Canada. I love that you're representing with the Iron Brew Extra today as well. You're just like... I was going to say
a live stream.
Yeah, where was your influence for the world, Jean?
Yeah, it definitely has sort of Celtic-y Scottish. It's not set in a real place, just to clarify. That is mainly why I changed the spelling of Albion, because Albion, Albion, a few people asked about this, is the ancient Roman word or name for Britain, ancient Britain, and I like the allusions to antiquity because obviously I love antiquity and the allusions to sort of like ancient Britain and that. But it is set in a fictional world with like elements of Scottish culture.
Yes.
That's what
All
we'll call
the good
it.
stuff and none of the rubbish stuff.
It's my utopia. It is genuinely set in my little utopia.
I love that because so what period of time were you actually writing all of this in? Because I feel like when you rocked up in the group chat and went, should I do this? We were just like, yeah, that's a great idea. But like how long did it take you to actually write this? At what period?
I started writing it in September. No, it was September because that was quite why I wanted it to come out in September as well. So I started writing it in September of 2018, and I finished writing it in August of 2020. Is that right? No, 2018. I missed a year. Did I say 2018? Anyway,
Yeah, you started writing it in 2018.
I started writing it in 2018 in September, finished writing it in 2020 in August. So it was almost 2 years. Yeah, it was like almost exactly 2 years. And I'd written a lot of it like quite back to back, didn't stop writing it. And then I sort of met a bit of a roadblock and then I finished it during the pandemic. So I think like when I was locked up in my mum's house, like sort of just the whole life and world changing around me, I decided to finish it finally. And then I was like, and then it was basically the past year has been deciding what to do with it and editing. Obviously,
I took up a Best Fiends and Merge Mansion habit, and you finished writing a book. Our lockdown journeys were very different.
I was meant to be finishing a PhD, which I haven't done. So it was my own form of procrastination, which is to do something else ridiculously like sort of overstretching myself.
I don't know. I mean, I think like you say, it's your utopia. So maybe partially writing it during lockdown was a happy, fun place for you to go, because that's definitely what I like about fantasy. Even when it's like Robin Hobb style fantasy, which is literally carving your heart out in little pieces with a blunt spoon. It's still Ashley's just finished that book, or are you still in the middle?
No, I'm starting Fool's Fate on Saturday, and I'm just like,
yeah, no.
cool.
Yeah. Even when it's a world like that, I still kind of feel like fantasy is coming home. Like I feel like it's rocking up in a place that wants you with people that you want to know about, and I don't get that from any other genre of fiction. So it makes sense that was the place you went during the pandemic.
It is full-blown escapism fantasy. I don't know if it's like as well for you guys, but I read a lot of fantasy as a kid. So even if it's the darker side of fantasy now as an adult, it's still just got a lot more of that escapist element from the real world.
Yeah. Weirdly, like my reading as a kid merged between like fantasy and Hercule Poirot. Which I think just explains a lot about me as an adult.
I was just like the Faraway Tree collection. Which
I never read
that does. I mean, that's basically Ashley's brand.
In the middle of this like magical, well, in the middle of woodland, and if you climbed up to the top of it, every single day there was a different world up there.
Okay, yeah.
Like that's
essentially Ashley's brand. Where Ashley would like to go.
Full metaphor for just books in themselves, though, right? Isn't it? Because they're kind of made of trees, and they go in a bookcase, and everything takes you somewhere else.
Speaking of books, we got a question in the comments. Is it expensive to self-publish a book?
Yes, obviously. Well, I mean, the thing is, isn't it? Like, money means different things to different people who have different amounts. And it's expensive in lots of ways because It's expensive in massive amounts of your time that you are not getting paid for and not necessarily ever going to get paid for, because obviously you don't know how much money you're going to make, which is true of writing. It's kind of true of writing in general. That's not just true of self-publishing, but anyone who sits down to write a book is pouring a lot of their time into it. So if you need to be working during that time, and like you not everyone's got the same amount of time, so it's really expensive in terms of time. It's expensive in terms of the overhead, but there's different things. Like, I had it really lucky in that one of the big expenses that a lot of authors have is cover, which my mum did. Just sounds like the most ridiculous like family, like. Luckily enough, my mum went to art college. She knows a thing or two about design, so she designed my book cover. So that is something I know for a lot of people is very expensive, which I didn't have to pay for. So I think I'm very lucky in that respect. But even if you get rid of those, there's like lots of little things I didn't expect you have to pay for. Like, there's the fact that like in the UK, you have to buy your ISBN numbers. You have to buy your barcodes separately. So that was another random thing I had to pay for.
So random.
Yeah, so there's like little things like that. I have had about like 10 proof copies at this point, and because they're self-published, every proof copy I have to pay for separately, which like aren't that expensive, but those things add up, and it's like little things I wasn't expected. I have commissioned some illustrations as well, some sort of like characters from the world, which hopefully I'll be able to, like, they're like in the works right now. They're not finished yet, but like I obviously wanted to pay the artist properly for that. So it varies obviously, but there's definitely like little costs that you need to take into consideration.
I feel like this is where you tell the story of Goodreads giveaways.
Oh, yes. That is something, again, look, you don't expect to cost money. So Goodreads, once you're like, I'm now an author on Goodreads, I have an author account, which is very exciting, and you can run giveaways for your books on Goodreads. And I thought this is a great way to give away a book, because it'll get seen by everybody who's liked the book. It's sort of like, you know, it's an easy way because people are on there looking for books and they're marking them as to read, and they can easily enter a giveaway just by clicking a button. And then it'll get randomly drawn by Goodreads, which is really easy on my behalf, on my part. And then also, if you do a giveaway for the e-copy, they can just send it directly to them because it's owned by Amazon, which also owns Kindle. So it's like, it's all synced up. It sounds like a great system. You think, yeah, I'm going to run a Goodreads review. Giveaway. To run a Goodreads giveaway for your own book, right? So like, I'd have to pay for the book that I was sending to them anyway. The basic package is, I can't even remember it, but it's over £100. It's more than £100 to run just a simple giveaway. And there's a second package, which in all things does come with like advertising in a sense, because it will be pushed by Goodreads on their platform, which is £600. And I am not sure that even if they push your giveaway on their platform, it could ever be worth £600 to you, because you'd have to sell like quite a lot of copies from them doing that. Like that, I don't see how that could be worth it. But like, I've not seen the metadata for Goodreads, but that I'm not paying £120 for a giveaway which doesn't even promote your book. That's ridiculous. Oh. So yeah, there's that.
Yes.
So that's why there's not been a giveaway, because I got really angry at Goodreads. Sorry.
We'll give away fan art bookmarks later in the year.
I do want to do something like a collaboration with Leanne, because if you don't know, Leanne has a wonderful, I keep wanting to do this and that's not the right way.
Here.
Leanne has a wonderful shop on Etsy where she sells bookmarks and pin flags and just general, I've got like actual pins from you as well, and just lots of like bookish goodies and postcards and prints. And we've talked about maybe doing some with dragons on them from themes in the book. So I'd love to do something like that if people like the book, obviously. So we might do a collaboration in the future, but in general, go and check out Leanne's shop, which is called Novel Menagerie.
I'll give you your commission for that plug later.
Good. I hope it's a bookmark.
I was thinking edible goods, but I can throw in bookmarks. My entire house is now filled with them. So. Right, so I have a question, swinging back around to the childhood thing. I want to know if you remember the first book that you read that had a dragon in it.
Oh my. Oh my, oh my, oh my.
Because dragons are very much like I think mushrooms and dark fairies, Ashley. Dragons, Jean.
It's a different kind of magic. There's a few like books, kids' books I love that had dragons in them. I'm not sure I can remember which one came first. But did anybody else ever read the Last Dragon series by Chris? Oh my god, I'm gonna have to Google this now. Series. I've got it on Chris Delaney. Yeah, I've got them on my bookcase actually. Oh, those were so good, and those were such an interesting take on dragons because they were like little dragons, like made out of pottery that had like fire breathed into them through like a kiln, like the fire of life breathed. Oh my god, they were like that but stone. How do you have it?
Ashley's like, here's what I made earlier. I only have Nessie.
This is from Jean. Do you know that bookshop that's not too far from me, Tyronga?
Yeah.
They give you origami animals when you leave. They gave me an origami.
Why haven't we been there?
That was a sign. That's a sign.
Oh.
We need to go.
This is going to be named after your dragon.
Oh, I'm furious now that I don't have a dragon prop. I'm like,
Nessie's kind of like a dragon because in my book there are four species of dragons in my book, and one of them is a hydratic dragon that lives under the sea. And I was partially inspired by Nessie. I'm not going to lie.
Hey.
I mean, it's a very concerned Nessie. Nessie is concerned that everybody buys your book.
Oh, thanks, Nessie.
They should.
I did this comment. Dragons equal serotonin. Agreed. Agreed. I used to have a stuffed dragon when I was a kid that was like, I think it was meant to be Puff the Magic Dragon. And I'm sure I had a cassette tape with Puff the Magic Dragon on it, but
you're
like
so lucky I did not just burst into song.
What happened to him? There's all these pictures of me with him when I was a kid, and I don't know what happened to him.
What happened is that Jean's notification scared us all to death. I love that. People are going to be making fan art too. That's exciting.
I can't imagine that. Like that, the whole idea that anyone would ever do. I hope one of you at least enjoys it enough to do that. I would be absolutely honored. 100%.
I was better at drawing people than maybe.
Oh, that's an intriguing idea. We can do this.
I do have a cocktail menu I designed, including cocktails and mocktails inspired by the dragon.
I love it. I am very much going to enjoy drinking all of them tomorrow. I may leave your house in more of a state than I got there.
Got Harry to drive you, that's all that matters.
Yes.
I can drop you off. There's mocktails. There's mocktails as well.
Yeah, it's fine. And also there's going to be a lot of baked goods. None, unfortunately, dragon themed because we're not creative enough, but lots of baked goods. So we can soak up some of it. It'll be fine. We'll be celebrating and watching your numbers go up all day.
Oh God, don't. I am so nervous about the whole thing. But
I was going to ask you that. What's the most nerve-wracking bit? Is it waiting for people's reviews?
I don't know. I think it's really important. Like, obviously, this isn't my first book. I do have a book that exists out there in the world. And I think it's important not to spend too much time like sitting on sites like Goodreads. You know, I review a book on Goodreads not so the author can read it and get feedback on their novel. I review it for other readers, you know, to see if so they can decide whether they have similar tastes to me and want to read it themselves. I think I'm kind of nervous. There'll be somebody who absolutely hated it, gives it 1 star, and then like tags me in the review because it's like that's just kind of disarming. That like makes me a bit nervous. But like I think everyone's entitled to, they can like it or not like it. That's fine as long as somebody likes it. I'm sort of like, if 50% of people hate it but 50% of people love it, that's fine. That's a winning number in my opinion. We can go for that.
How is it becoming an author, like after being a book reviewer. I mean, obviously you're still both,
Mm.
but
Yeah. That's a weird journey you've been on.
As soon as my first book came out, I stopped reading all other books. I only read my own.
I've made it. All of these are useless now.
It is interesting though. You do have a different perspective though. Like, it is really interesting. Like, being like having been a book reviewer and then becoming an author, because I think there's like pros and cons to it, because it's sort of like you want to be an honest reviewer, but you also don't want to hurt authors' feelings. And it's like, I think that's why it's so important to keep those two spaces separate, because like I want to be able to review honestly, but I don't want to make authors feel bad. So you want to sort of like, you only like, I don't know, it's like if you've got something offensive in your book, then like if someone read my book and was like, this is super offensive, I would want to know. But if they just didn't like it, that's fine. You do you.
Yeah,
it's fine. Keep it to yourself. Tell other people, but don't tell me. But I think, I don't know, you do sort of, I think what's interesting is like us, we read a lot. And I actually know people who are writers who read a lot less than us. Like, not coming from a book reviewing background, you read almost less, because we do read a bit more than the average person. So I think, I don't know, it's interesting because you can get like a real sort of engaging with people online, gives you an idea of like if there are people who have the same interests as you. So like I felt like, even though Flames of Albiyon is like a bit different because it's not like grim dark fantasy, which is what gets like amongst published fantasy, a lot of it's super grim dark. That's what's super popular. Yeah. But like I feel like from talking to people online and reviewing books online and watching other book reviewers, that there is space for a more hopeful, happy story. So like I also feel like it's just like they're good things. They're good things to be both of them, as long as you can have a sort of like line in your head somewhere. I don't know. Everything's navigated.
I guess it's kind of the Becky Chambers phenomenon for sci-fi, right? Where like everybody was like, we've got adventure stories over here, we've got super hard sci-fi over here, we've got like end of the world stories over here, and then there's Becky Chambers with this series which is like about people liking each other, and it's like you've just walked in and you're now the Becky Chambers of fantasy. Don't roll your eyes at my friend. That's unacceptable.
I am your friend. I know. I do love The Small Way to a Small. I think A Long Way to a Small Planet also gave me a bit of faith that there was space for books like that as well, because people have really loved that, and it's really nice. I think some people do just want something a little bit. Yes, there's drama, and yes, there is danger, and yes, everything does not go perfectly, but there's overall a sense of hope, and the characters are nice people. Flawed, but nice people.
People that you actually want to root for. I think though that some of my favorite fantasy worlds, even like thinking back to when I was a teenager and like David Eddings was sort of like my gateway into fantasy, and now I'm like, yeah, David Eddings is great, but you know, it's also a man writing women in the 80s. But I go back to like those books and I think, it's the characters and the world that draws me in, not necessarily the drama and the plot. Like the drama and the plot were great, the trekking all over the world, and that's fine. But I'm there for the relationships between the characters, and I feel like more and more people are kind of, I don't know, it's a bit of a reclaiming the genre from like gatekeeping people who are like, no, fantasy needs to have this much death in it and this much boobs.
And sometimes
although there are boobs.
There are boobs in my book, that's true.
There are boobs.
I hope they are not seen for the male gaze though. Very much female gaze boobs.
The best kind of boobs.
Oh my god, I've already forgotten what I was gonna say.
Distracted by boobs.
Yeah, you literally me by talk of boobs. There was something and I can't remember what it is now. What were we talking about before boobs?
Breaking stereotypes.
Ashley, get back on topic.
This is why I'm here. I'm the moderator of you two.
Thank you, Ashley, for being the voice.
We love you, but we need you too.
No, it's characters. Like I'm the same. Like not all my books have to be about characters, but if it's like a series, if it's a fantasy book, a sci-fi book, if it's a book in a world where I have to get invested, in it, I'm most invested in character. Like I really, really invest like my time and energy and like love and for a book in the characters. So I think like the characters mean a lot to me in this book as well.
That was a question that came from Instagram that I really liked, which was, what was your favorite part of writing the book? So was it the characters?
Yeah, absolutely. I really like writing the scenes which are just like characters interacting with each other. Like I really liked writing those ones. Like sort of in between bits almost, you know, in between like the sort of, oh my God, this is happening. But like then in between they're existing around each other and growing and maybe developing feelings for each other. Or like obviously there's a newborn dragon in my book as the dragon grows older and bonds with her companion. There's all of that. I loved writing that. Like I loved seeing, for example, the young dragon's personality develop because it wasn't entirely within my control. I think like it sort of just happens as well. So I loved writing that. I loved the relationship between the two women that are part of the sapphic romance develop. I loved also writing about her friends and her friendships. I really like those scenes. Although there are some more dramatic scenes I enjoyed writing too, but I think like I could just sit down and write loads of side stories just of daily interactions between the characters, and I would love that.
I saw Samantha Shannon say something like that.
Really?
One season book. She was like spent like 3 days updating people on how incredibly stressed she was writing like a fight scene or something like that, and then she was like, back to quiet moments where everybody gets to be broody. That's where I want to be.
I actually have I don't know if this is, when people have read the book, maybe they can actually tell me whether they'd be interested in this or not, because I can maybe post it on my website or on Patreon or something. But I like, whilst I was writing the book, sometimes I would write little sort of like offshoots that weren't part of the book. So like I wrote a whole like 4 chapters worth of story about Adaria's, the main character's 2 best friends, because there's a point where like it's just about them. It's just like what they're doing with their day, like when Adaria's not there.
So that needs to go on your Patreon as like deleted scenes.
Yeah, because it like would have messed with the narrative flow of the book, but like it's fun to see the background.
Yes.
And I also have some stories I wrote just about the like, because there's like a few dragons, but there's 2 main dragons, the newborn dragon and an older dragon, and there's just like a scene of them just like hanging around together talking about how stupid humans are. Because
I mean, that is incredibly relatable. Oh, I like that. It sounds like the Merry and Pippin chapter of Albion.
I love it.
Yes.
I wish all of Lord of the Rings was about Merry and Pippin.
I love that. So here's a question that I think every author gets, always, ever. Are the characters inspired by people in your real life?
No.
I feel obligated to ask because I know people are sitting there like, but who?
I mean, I think like the cliche of like the bad guys, there's definitely, they're not people I know in real life, but there's definitely elements of a few of our past prime ministers in like the antagonists. A little bit of like sort of hardcore far right Tories. But no one I know in real life. Yeah, not really. And I think there's like elements, aren't there, of like there's a bit of me maybe in the protagonist and a bit of me in the other characters, but then other parts of the protagonist are nothing like me. So it's sort of like a mixture. And I guess like, yeah, there's probably like little bits of the people I love and know and spend a lot of time with in a lot of the characters, but no one person is one other person, like comparable to a real life person, if that makes sense.
Did they all walk in fully formed then? Because you mentioned that like some of the younger dragon, you know, that was out of your control. Hold on, I'm going to put on a light, but answer my question. I'm over here.
Well, like at the beginning of the book, the baby dragon doesn't exist, because it is just an egg. And I started the book writing it about my protagonist and the egg sort of awakening and then bonding. So in my head, the dragon didn't exist. So the dragon didn't really have a personality because
I love that.
it didn't really exist. But like Adaria was pretty much, I knew who she was right at the beginning. So, yeah, I think like it's interesting. So I do think there's an element of whenever I write, there's some similarities in the characters I sometimes write. But like, because I've never published another fantasy novel, you wouldn't know that because you've not like. I've definitely written versions of some of these characters before, but they're different and they're more fully fleshed now than they ever have been before.
I mean, I guess there's always going to be themes that are like you as an author are going to repeat in your books because they're things that you love. Like, I guess
Like,
it's one of those things like the menu of Jean. You know what I mean? Dragons, socialism, boobs.
It
We've
could be
covered lots of it already.
a drinking game every time you find it in the book.
Yes. A very, very Jean thing.
Was there any particular character that was like more difficult to write than the other ones?
Oh gosh, I think I know it's really boring, but I find it harder to write antagonists just because it takes more for me to get into their brain. Like it's fun when you get there and it is really interesting. And obviously you have to think really carefully about who they are. But like, because I don't necessarily identify with the antagonist of the novel particularly, it is harder.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I know some authors really like writing antagonists, but I'm a bit boring and I just like writing the nice characters. The easiest people to get into the head of is dragons. Personally, I find it much easier to write dragons than humans.
Because the dragons just hate people. I mean, that
The dragons, yeah.
that was
The dragons
just
are
all
like,
of us for the last 15 months, right?
absolute nonsense. I think I've got like they're not an antagonist, but one of my protagonist's best friends. Actually, I love her character. So there's my protagonist has two best friends. Like this is pretty obvious from the beginning, called Calder and Morag, a man and a woman. And Morag was definitely harder for me to write than Calder because Morag is quite stoic. She's like very reserved. Quite like abrupt and doesn't really show her emotions and doesn't love other people or being around them unless she really, really loves them. I don't know. She's like of a more reserved person. And she's hard to write because all of her emotions aren't there on the page in the way that Calder is such a loud character. He's so like obvious in all of his emotions. He's so happy to share everything about himself. So it was really easy to write that down and write him on the page and how expressive he is. Whereas Morag, to get across her character without her just... I had one of my original beta readers said that she thought Morag was going to end up being an antagonist because she just seemed so like grumpy and
I love that though because I feel like Morag is everybody's Scottish friend. Do you know what I mean? Like everybody's got that one Scottish friend who permanently looks like they're sucking lemons but would do anything for you. Like he's a very...
That is Morag.
Yes.
That is absolutely Morag.
Amazing to me.
It took me a while to get to grips with her in terms of like conveying her to the reader more than anything else. But I like love her, and she feels very fully fleshed in my head. It's just getting that on the paper is quite hard, I think.
Yes,
sometimes.
It must be fun because you are like living that Greek myth thing where it's like I have many muses, they all live in my head. There's no space for me.
I've got like a whole little notebook of all the books I want to write, and it's just like getting ridiculous at this point. There's no time.
I love that. Is there other genres that you want to write in other than fantasy?
Yeah, I mean,
I like that. It was like, yeah, I'm not telling you.
Well, I was going to say I've already written a children's non-fiction book, so that was quite different.
Yes.
As Ashley and Leanne well know, I'm actually on deadline right now to write a second children's non-fiction book, which is with the same publisher as my first one, DK, and it's coming out next August, but I can't tell you what it's about. It's a secret.
It's a secret. I think with this one though, there's less like panicked group chat messages and more like this weird fact that I found. Why does this exist? I'm personally loving you writing it. I mean, I'm fine with you being on deadline. I know so many random facts that I can take to parties now.
That's what my children's books are best for. Party facts. I would really, really like to write a few things. Like I'd really like to write a Highlander romance, which I've said a few times before. Mainly because I just think it'd be hilarious to have a Highlander romance that's actually written by a Scottish person. But my most recent idea, actually, that I'm really latched onto, you know, when you get an idea and you're like, oh, that, can't forget about that. I really want to write, I've like been thinking about it a lot recently, is a YA gothic 19th century horror novel set at a girls' boarding school that I've got like a whole like plot around, but
I think that's to mute myself there for a moment so that I could just have a like, give it to me.
I feel like though I'm just like right now I'm just like focused on Flames of Albiyon coming out and then like a little break from writing, back to deadline for DK, and then we can look at more fiction in the future.
Yeah. I think it's like a different experience though, isn't it? Because there's I think there's like an element of writing fiction where it's just like I'm just sitting in the dark in my little room with my laptop, hoping that somebody one day somewhere likes this. Yeah. Whereas you know that when you're writing like the non-fiction children's books, you've got an audience for that. There are people that want to read that, but you're like, please like these people that I have made because I like them.
Yeah, exactly. It's not, you're not responsible for like, you're responsible for writing it in an engaging way and conveying the information in an accessible way, and doing the research, but you're not making people up. Like, I did not make up the Greek pantheon. I just wrote about it.
Shh, don't tell people that. We're all sitting here thinking like, oh.
That was me. I made that up.
We do have some excitement for the YA horror though in the comments.
Yes.
Oh, yes, thank you. Oh God, don't encourage me because I should not start.
Time to start friendly bullying again.
You say that with so much menace and joy in your face at the same time.
Yes. Don't you know that the only thing that Ashley and I talk about when you're not there is about how to bully you into writing the things that we want?
Oh, maybe NaNoWriMo is in 2 months.
Oh, I really upset the cat with that noise. That was that.
Oh, hi.
When you two are here, you summon cats. Like anytime I do a stream on my own for any reason, they're just like, nah, mate, carry on. And then you two appear and it's suddenly like cats are everywhere.
The dulcet tones of Jean and Ashley call the cats.
Oh, I love that. Oh, I like that. All my buzzwords, YA Gothic boarding school.
Yeah.
Same.
I need to pay attention because I'm the only person that can pop these up on the screen, which is annoying. I wish there was a feature with StreamYard where like anybody on the stream could pop up the comment. Thank you. I'm glad people are on board with the YA Gothic 19th century horror novel. There's also magic and potential sapphicness.
I like this question as well. What makes this book an adult fantasy book? Like, how does it differ from YA fantasy?
What's interesting is I feel like this is me just getting like philosophical now on the topic of literature and genres, because I think it's interesting that it's not the other way around. Like, I would always have assumed in the past that a book was adult before it was YA, and then it's like what elements make it YA as opposed to what elements make it adult. Like, I would say, like, I would have thought the baseline is adult and then YA it is made suitable for YA audience, as opposed to you write a book and then does that make sense? Like, to anybody else?
I know what you mean, because I think a lot of fantasy, especially written by women, that is heavily reviewed and talked about on the internet, is automatically assumed as young adult when it's not.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah,
think
that's true.
when you come at it from the internet, it also comes with the young adult assumption. Whereas you just come off, like, if you just find it in a bookstore randomly, you're probably going to assume it's adult first.
Yeah.
Yes,
Really.
yeah, conversation. Yeah, absolutely. It's like it's interesting because when I was a young adult, like a teenager, I read adult books. Like, I wouldn't say this book is inappropriate for teenagers, but I would just say that it's about characters who are 28. Well, no, there's a 27-year-old character, but the main character is 28. So it's sort of like 28 and above main characters. So, you know, they've like experienced certain things already in their life. And there is some mild sex in the book. It's not like super smutty, but it's not entirely fade to black either. But it's all very consensual and all very respectful, which, to be honest, I would have felt very comfortable and happy reading as a teenager, but not all teenagers would. And it's not necessarily what I feel makes a book YA is that it deals more with issues that young adults face and like that period in your life and those emotions in your life. Whereas I wouldn't necessarily say this book does. It's more of a, you know, when you're in your late 20s and you're sort of maybe your whole life's been upheavaled and it's all changing.
Yeah.
Which can happen at any age.
Like Ashley said, there's definitely a trend where it's always female fantasy authors who, when they're bringing out a new book, you see all over their social media, this is not YA. Please do not give this to your teenagers. So it's nice that this one has like a crossover, because definitely, like, I mean, YA as a genre didn't really exist when we were growing up and stuff.
No.
So I read what was available to me, which again explains a lot about me as an adult. And I think now there's like a bigger concern for making books appropriate, like age appropriate. Whereas for us, it was just kind of like, here's your library card, have fun.
I mean, yeah, it's about how old characters are as well. Like, I never used to care how old characters are, and now that's the defining thing. Because I was going to say, when it comes to Flames of Albiyon, it's not necessarily that there's anything inappropriate in it for any particular age, besides like maybe really young, but it would just be, for a lot of people, the fact that the characters are 27, 28 that makes it adult.
Yeah. But like, I feel like at the end of the day, that's the only thing you can really use as a marker, because otherwise people disagree so heavily. Like, because it's like in Jane Austen, they're teenagers, or basically teenagers, aren't they? It's just like, it all gets really difficult. Like, otherwise you just be like, right, do you know what? They're in their late 20s, so it's an adult novel. For adults. It's for adults.
Yes. I guess well, there is that whole conversation of like, when you have an adult book, which does have like I hate going back to Robin Hood, but she has all the things, but it has like a teenage protagonist that is, you know, growing into the story, but is very much not a YA book.
Yeah.
It's not a YA world. But I think there's a different tone at the start of your book. I feel like your book has both like a comfortable tone, like I felt very like I can kick up my feet and spend several hours in this world and I will be okay with it, but also like ooh, this could get juicy. And I think that's like, I don't usually feel like that with YA novels, so I feel like you get it from the tone at the start that it's sort of pitched towards that end of the spectrum.
Yeah, and I like I said, I would like to write YA as well, so it'd be interesting experiencing, because I think it's something you think about more in the writing process, like what it'll be like when I'm consciously trying to write for young adults. Because obviously I've consciously written for children, I've consciously written just like for myself what I feel like with Flames of Albiyon. So I just think adult because I just wrote it for myself. So YA would be different as well. But the thing is, it doesn't matter what you say, because like I think I said this to Leanne recently. I got a like 2-star review on my children's book from somebody saying it was too childish because they'd obviously thought it was an adult book. And I was like, well, do you know what? I can't just like,
what do you want me to do with that?
This children's book, and someone bought it as an adult book and was disappointed. So like the end, it just all.
Do you know though, I had never actually considered what it would be like, sort of like writing backwards, starting with an adult book and then writing for like YA or children's, until I did that interview with Benjamin Dean, because he was talking about how when his book idea came to him, he was not consciously writing for children in any way. He was just writing in his tone, and it wasn't until afterwards that he was like, maybe I won't include that part. And I was like, I didn't think about that as like a reverse engineering process. Do you know what I mean? Like, oh, I can't include that. or I have to make that not necessarily like more understandable, like you're talking down to a teenager, but I have to make that like more relatable for where they are in their lives.
Yeah. And then, but there's also just like beyond even just like what teens actually like and what teens actually want to read and what like the marketing world and the publishing world and schools will accept. Because a couple of years ago, I judged the Blue Peter Children's Book Award, where we were the sort of preliminary judges to shortlist books for this book award, with children being the ones that picked the winner. And a book that had originally been longlisted had to get disqualified because a character in the book was playing an 18+ video game. And therefore, according to the rules of the prize, it wasn't allowed to be included. So it's just like, it's all very complicated.
Seriously.
And here's me reading The Lovely Bones at the age of 13.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, there was a comment there that's like, I read Jodi Picoult and Stephen King as a teenager and discovered YA in my 20s, and I was like, same. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think I read my first true crimey type book. Literally, I was 13, and I revisited it as an adult, and I was like, girl, you made choices.
That's what I was like with The Lovely Bones, because I'm like, if anyone knows that story, you'll know that she was the exact same age as me when I read it, and that is not a nice story to be reading.
No.
Yeah, it was not written for 13-year-olds.
No. Just like it doesn't always work out that the age of the character is the age you should be.
Funny though, because I was talking to my friend Kirsty about this recently, because she is a children's librarian, and quite a lot of the time she does get kids come in and be like, Miss, can I borrow X? And she's like, no. You really can. It's age restricted for a reason. And they're like, but like I want to read it. Like, it's got things in it that I'm interested in. And she's sitting there thinking, in fairness, I was reading things like Charles Dickens when I was a kid. I would not say the stuff in Dickens is necessarily appropriate for a young audience. But
sometimes I certainly pass through your head, right? Like you don't get it, so it's fine.
Like the amount of dead bodies that there are that have died in like gruesome ways in classical literature. But like my little brain did not seem to like latch onto them. Like 30+-year-old Leanne is like, okay, we done spent 4 pages talking about a forest, and that person died in 2 very brutal paragraphs. Okay.
I was gonna say, I'm just like, isn't it Oliver Twist where someone gets impaled on a fence at one point?
Yeah. And that's about a child.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there are definitely some awful things that like I read as a kid that I'm just thinking, do you know what? No matter what's in Jean's book, we'll go be fine. We'll be fine.
This is where everyone reads it and find out that everybody's been eaten by dragons.
Yes. The secret plot of my novel is dragons take over and everybody else dies. It's not. Like,
I welcome our dragon overlords. No, I welcome the dragon takeover. Bring it. Like, more dragons, less people would be a more harmonious world. Just do it Survivor style with dragons. It's fine.
I've never watched Survivor, so I apologize for not getting the reference.
Betting people in the comments will.
All that matters. I think you're also not alone, Ashley. Apparently, this is like a rite of passage that many children went through.
It was probably like reverse psychology and how to not get us to walk off with strangers, to be fair.
True. That is very effective, I would imagine.
Well, I mean, honestly, like, even Macbeth, I got introduced to Macbeth at like a really, really young age.
I read when I was 12 in school.
Damn, son. Like, oh, there's some stuff in there that I'm just like, yes. But unfortunately, the problem with all 3 of us is we all went, Lady Macbeth, role model. We were all like, yeah.
He's blamed for the whole thing.
Oh, the things that we have in common.
Oh dear.
Oh.
We've literally just we have descended into the topic of age appropriateness, and because I was about to start talking about documentaries I watched when I was 11, and I was like, Jean, this is irrelevant.
That's normal for us though. That's normal for us.
Oh, good.
Okay, so one last thing that I really, before you do any readings or anything like that, I wanted to point this one out because I like this question that Michelle asked. She's like, I love how fantasy often has something to say about our modern condition, politics, and humanity. Did you find this with your debut? If so, is it conscious or inevitable? Deep question to throw you into after all of our twists and impaled things.
Both conscious and inevitable. I strongly am in the camp of there's no such thing as an apolitical book. The only books that people ever call apolitical are books that just adhere to the status quo, but that in itself is political. People go around calling queer children's books political because that's not the status quo. But I'm sorry, if you just promote exclusively heterosexuality and traditional marriage in your children's books, then you're also being political because you're just doing what is the status quo. So all books are political. I guess I would just say mine's is maybe slightly more explicitly so.
In what way? Give people a small taste of what flavour of Jean we can find in the politics.
Well, there's a bunch of things. One of the things I think about a lot when I read a lot of fantasy is almost all fantasy has monarchies, right? Which makes sense because a lot of it's set in sort of medieval-esque or ancient-esque worlds. So they maybe have more medieval-esque governments. Even though democracy existed a long, long time ago in ancient Athens. And but most fantasy books seem to have that kind of political system, and I really wanted to write a book where there wasn't a monarchy. I want to write a book where the ordinary people had a rebellion and overthrown the monarchy, but I didn't want to write a book about the people overthrowing the monarchy. I just wanted it to be at the point where there was no monarchy. I also sort of wanted to write a book where it was sort of not exploring an awful world where things needed to be changed, but a better world where things needed to continue to be fought for. Because I think that's also a little bit more relatable, because you often read a book where it's the Hunger Games and it all needs to be overthrown, and you're already at that worst point, which, to be fair, a lot is wrong with our society. But I think people read that and don't necessarily see our world at that point. Whereas in my world, it's lots is fantastic, but there are threats to what is wonderful, and there's threats to equality, and there's threats to the lives of ordinary people, and there are those that wish to benefit from the misery and the sort of feelings of other people that would take advantage of that, a little bit like the Conservative Party, and and the goal is more to prevent them from doing that, and to sort of, because even in the most perfect world there are always those that would hope to seek to benefit from sort of going above other people's heads. And I've not got my political articulation hat on right now, but I think you know what I mean. I want to try
this. We were just talking about Oliver Twist and people being impaled, so I threw that one out of completely out of left field, but I wanted to see what you would do with it, because I felt like there would be a good Jean speech in it, and I was right. There was a good Jean speech in it.
That's it, basically. I wanted a non-monarchy fantasy world. So there is a democracy, there's a democratic parliament in this fantasy world. But there are threats to that. There are those who, are more right-wing. There are those who are still racist. There are those that are still against sort of intermarriage between it's a fantasy world, so they don't like marriage, say, between fairies and humans or something like that. There are still prejudices and problems, but I like to hope there's also
refreshing though, because one of the things that very much, I don't know about Ashley, but one of the things that for me makes me put down a fantasy book when I'm reading the blurb is yet another never a more Jean comment ever have I seen. That's a perfect icon for that one as well. Just the very judgmental dog. Yeah, but I if I'm reading a fantasy blurb and I haven't had it pitched at me by you two, and I'm judging it myself, if I see rebellions, overthrowing the world, threats to everything, I'm next. Because I'm over it. I've had enough. I've had enough of like the world being awful and horrible and the story being about the rebellion, but then it just drops you off at that point where it's like, right, well, we've torn all the shit down and now we've got rubble. I don't really know what we're doing with it now, but I'm leaving. I hope you enjoyed the story. And I'm like, but I want the other bit. So you filled that like fantasy niche for me of like
some hope. I just wanted to present some hope. Even when things go wrong sometimes, there's some hope.
The desperation on your face there. I want some hope.
Means as much for myself as anybody else.
You'll say, can you tell that Jean finished this in a pandemic?
You really can.
But no, I get what you mean though, because I do still read the stories of rebellions and like
you can't avoid them.
I do always wonder, but what next? Like, because as you said, it's you reach the end, you've torn everything apart, you know, you've got that kind of, and now we move on, and it's like, okay, well, what does that look like? Like, what would be the perfect world? And I guess it was interesting to see what Jean's idea of that would be in terms of not perfect,
very biased.
Okay, back to the Jean drinking game.
Somebody did actually ask to see my cocktail menu. Do you think I can get it up and show it on this?
Oh, that's risky, girl. You and the technology of StreamYard, that's risky. We could also see your Tesco grocery shop or all of the board games that are in your cart on Amazon. Just as likely that we could see all of those.
Fine, share screen.
I am going to take this moment of technological struggles to dip out.
I will see that before you go, actually, then. Yes, Ashley's actually going to help out with some reading sprints, which you are obviously very free to go along to too. And even after this ends, I would all encourage you to go get some reading done over on Becca's channel. That's where Ashley's going to be. But we're very appreciative of her taking time out of her busy schedule for us.
Thank you for having me. Everybody go and buy Jean's book and Leanne's Bookmarks. And I'll see you some other time.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, Leanne's going to hang around for the cocktail reveal.
Of course. I love that Lena's right in there like, I want to see Jean's cart. Everybody wants to see your board game cart on Amazon.
Thanks. I'm not opening it because it's way too long and embarrassing. But you can see my cocktail menu, which I know Lena will also appreciate.
Do it. Yes.
Not pointed.
There's a reason we're friends with Lena.
Okay, so I don't know how to just share the file, so I've just opened. Can you see that?
Yeah.
So this is my drinks menu for so there's 4 types of dragon in my universe. There are hydratic dragons, there are ethereal dragons, chthonic dragons, and piratic dragons. So I designed 5 cocktails, 2 mocktails, 3 alcoholic, around each of the things. So if you want to screenshot this for later, we'll just leave it there for a moment.
Yeah. We'll share it on social media later, and we'll also do a fun game of ticking all of the things that that Leanne drank and how squiffy Leanne was when she stumbled out of Jean's front door.
Yeah, we'll take pictures. Very much agree with this. If you also want more like hope punk, like sort of themed sci-fi, Murderbot is amazing. It's so good. I can share this on social media later as well. It doesn't have to just be on here. So if let me know, and I can always share that on Twitter.
Love it.
On the tweets, man. Do you think there was anything else super pertinent that I could answer before reading?
Before you jump into reading, maybe just repeat, because there's quite a lot of people asking where they can buy it. I think people tuning in later on. So maybe do a repeat of where can we buy all of your stuff?
Okay, right. So as of the moment, there are 3 places you can buy ebooks and 3 places you can buy physical books. And those are the only places at the moment you can get it. And they're the only places that I know for sure you will ever be able to get it. because as much as I sort of am aiming for a bit wider distribution, maybe Book Depository, whatever in the long run, maybe some independent bookshops, none of that is a certainty, so I cannot guarantee any of it will happen. But you can definitely buy it from Kindle, Nook, or Kobo as an e-copy. Or you can buy it as a physical copy from lulu.com, which is a self-publishing platform that sells self-published books, in case people aren't familiar with it. Amazon, which, I mean, like, you all know Amazon is. And Lulu also ship internationally for those interested. And Barnes & Noble, which only ship to the US. So that one's a US exclusive, but Amazon and Lulu are for everybody, as are the ebook copies. And I know I did see a couple people asking about audiobooks. That is something I would really... Oh, I was going to say, I did see a couple people. It's the most recent comment. I would love to do an audiobook. I mean, one, because I love listening to audiobooks, and two, because of accessibility, and I would love to do that. That is something that costs a lot of money when we're talking about overhead as a self-published author. So my plan is to wait and see the end of this year, kind of how the book is doing, and whether it's something that's financially viable for me, because I would do it if I can afford it.
You've got other options as well. You could maybe like release it a chapter at a time as like Patreon paid content, that kind of stuff.
There's sort of two main, I was thinking there's two main ways of doing audiobook. There's the traditional route of hiring someone who is an experienced audiobook narrator, which would be incredible. I know other self-published authors that have done that. And then it's very like easy to get it onto Audible, just like how it's easy to get a self-published book onto Kindle. And that's something that would be completely doable. But like I said, we need to pay for the editing and the recording. Or there is if people are super desperate for it, me just recording a version of the audiobook and putting it on Patreon, or just selling it, but it like as a file, but it wouldn't be as high quality because the recording would be in my house and I'm not a professional audiobook narrator. So these are things I'm sort of like, I want to do it, but I'm going to wait a month or two and see how things are going and then look further into it, because it's just been so mad trying to do everything.
I love that as well. Would you do the voices of the dragons?
See, I don't know if I could do voices. That's kind of why I want to hire a proper audiobook narrator. Maybe I could like record my own version, use the funds from selling that to pay for a proper narrator. I'm saying that.
Listen,
I'm pretty sure it's narrating audiobooks.
Me and you, my snowball microphone and some egg cartons, we can get it done, girl. We can get it done.
But you do need to have a Scottish accent. Because in my head, most of the characters have a Scottish accent and they use Scots dialogue occasionally. So it would be weird if they didn't have a Scottish accent.
Yes.
Well, okay. So I think Connor has very, very kindly led us into the next portion of this. So I'm going to turn a light on because it's gotten very dark. But as I feel...
difficult.
Well, as I feel is sort of what often people do at book launches, they read a part of their book. So
Story time with Jean.
For anybody who doesn't know, my boyfriend Chris is like in this room with me right now, just having to experience this whole thing. Poor boy.
We stan Chris.
He's a lovely boy.
Yeah.
So I'm going to I'm reading. Shall I take you off the screen, Leanne, or do you want to have all your reactions recorded for posterity?
I'm quite happy to hang here and be excited in the background.
Okay, I'm going to keep you then, because that's nice. It makes me feel like I've got more company.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay, so, and I didn't say, all of the links are in the description box of this video for everywhere you can buy the book, just so you know.
Yeah.
And if you do work at a bookshop, and you could look up if my book is available to order and let me know, that would be amazing, because I have no way of double checking, but I have agreed to distribution with Lulu, so it would just be cool to know. I'm not saying you have to order it.
We will pull our peeps and see if it's available.
Okay, so I've already talked lots. My mouth is a little bit dry. I apologize if this isn't of audiobook quality. This is not something I have done very often, read from my own books. So I'm going to read from literally chapter 1 for you, because I feel like I don't want to give away any spoilers. So that's kind of easing you in. Yeah, easing you in. I'm also skipping the brief prologue, but again, like, you like this will still make sense without the prologue. If you want to read the prologue, which is literally a page and a half.
The jokey part.
Yeah. Okay. So, chapter 1, the egg. There really was no. See, I've already screwed up because it's so nerve-wracking. Okay.
It's okay. Take it. Take a deep breath. Pretend it's just me. You've done worse in front of me. Pretend it's just me.
Okay. Right. There really was no way she could ignore it. Countless pairs of eyes had already turned from across the room to look in her direction. Heads raised from the maps they were studying, books were placed face down to mark the reader's place, and bodies swiveled where they stood. Adaria, meanwhile, was torn between mortification and horror. As she stood there, mouth agape, the rag she held in her hand slipped between her fingers and onto the marble floor. Aghast, she watched the fracture spread, new lines spiralling outward from the original fissure in an ominous embrace. The noise the first crack made had reverberated throughout the otherwise silent room, impossibly loud. Finally, it seemed to pause in its tracks, ceasing to spread any further, and Adaria felt she could tear her eyes away for long enough to gaze around the cavernous chamber. Without exception, everyone's eyes were fixed firmly in her direction. Expressions of shock, confusion, and even anger stared back at her. There was no fleeing now. Just gonna have some water. Just pause.
How? No, you cannot pause. It's a cliffhanger. Get on with it.
There was actually a break in the text there, so.
Okay, yeah, I'll let you away with it.
It had been mid-morning in Aeolus when Adaria reached the marble gallery. She had been hard at work since 5 that morning, scrubbing floors, polishing pedestals, and replacing books that had wandered from their appropriate shelves. Once she finished dusting the last room, she reminded herself, she would finally be free to enjoy a well-earned midday meal and perhaps some light reading of her own. At the beginning of each month, the university's domestic tasks were divided up between its residents. The foundling children raised with the support of the university were welcome to continue to live on institution grounds once they were legally adults. However, they were each required to pitch in their share. In order to receive room and board, they were responsible for the same tasks as any employee would be, from cleaning to cooking, caring for the horses and other animals on site, repairing anything that might need a little restoration, as well as serving as messengers for the various academics who worked there full time. Adaria had never been much good at cooking or mending broken wagons, but she had a fixating nature that made her an excellent gardener and cleaner. That month, Adaria had been tasked with keeping the 3rd floor of the university's attached museum neat and tidy. Each of the grand rooms that made up the building were known colloquially by the material their walls were made from. Just moments before, she had left behind the now spotless limestone chamber for its more glamorous marble neighbour, and this had been the last room on her rounds for the morning. The gallery itself was cavernous, was a cavernous circular room that could be seen jutting out from the rest of the building by any observer stationed outside. It had a specially built ceiling made of thinly formed rose quartz that cast a pinkish hue over the marble walls and floors. There were various tables and chairs dotted around the room haphazardly, some adorned with maps and larger reference volumes, while others remained empty and waiting. These were accompanied by various plinths and glass cabinets that bordered the space. This is where the museum displayed some of its most impressive artifacts. The armour and shield of the legendary King Leith, a larger-than-human-sized gilt mirror that let the gazer look upon the face of the person they missed most. The red velvet cloth diary of the university's founder, bound shut by magic and unopened for centuries, as well as an enormous, fossilised dragon's egg, the dazzling orange surface of which had been perfectly smooth up until about 6 seconds ago. Adaria would swear she had not touched the thing, not even with her cloth. She knew better than that. All she had done was gone to wipe down the front of its pedestal like every other time she had cleaned this room. As soon as her hand touched the base, however, she had heard that sickening crack. Horrified, she leapt up to her feet and watched with bated breath as the damage she would surely be blamed for unfolded. Not until the fracture finally ceased to spread was she able to catch her breath. Maybe it was not that bad. Of course it was bad, but not as bad as a splintered pile of rubble and some fossilised infant dragon bones. Maybe she was not.
I'm sorry. Of course it was bad. I love it. One of my favorite lines. Of course it was bad.
Maybe she was not about to be thrown out of the university for just the destruction of a priceless historical artifact. Maybe. It was at that moment that she felt a hand on her shoulder. Turning her head a fraction to the right, Adaria found herself staring at the slightly watery brown eyes and coarse braided grey beard of Cyril, one of the senior academics at the university. He stood about 3 inches taller than Adaria, looking down at her ever so slightly, concern plastered across his features. "You best come with me," he whispered, gesturing to the archway at the back of the hall, which Adaria knew led to a narrow flight of stairs. "I'll take you to the Chancellor's rooms." See, I don't know. I don't think I can do an elderly man's voice. This is why I'm not sure I'm qualified to do the audiobook. Together, they walked to the exit. Cyril marched in front while Adaria trailed behind, staring fixedly ahead, afraid of what she would see if she caught anyone else's eye. It was not until they were halfway up the winding stone staircase that she blurted out the words she had been holding in since the moment she had withdrawn her hand from the plinth. "I didn't touch it, I swear it!" She hesitated before blundering on. "I mean, I touched the plaque, but I didn't touch the egg. I would never touch it. It's just, it was on the rota and I've cleaned it countless times before." She trailed off when Cyril paused just long enough to turn and look woefully back at her. I'm not sure that makes a difference," Cyril sighed, and without any further elucidation, turned back around and continued up the stairs. Adaria was not sure what else she could say at this point, so she trudged behind him, hitching the skirts of her dress up so she would not trip and break her neck on top of everything else. That was about all she needed. At the top of the stairs was a short corridor, no longer than a few paces, just enough space for a life-size portrait to hang on one wall bearing the face of the university's founder, Caledon, in a heavy gold frame. Cyril reached the door at the end of the corridor first and rapped the knocker lightly against the wood. They did not have to wait long, as a split second later the door swung open to frame the figure of a tall woman who at first glance might have passed for her early 70s, although Adaria knew she was well past 90. With long white hair, brown skin, and an imposing wooden staff held in one hand like a walking stick. This was the university's chancellor. "Cyril, we've been waiting on you to get started," she exclaimed. "Come on then." She moved back into the room slightly to allow Cyril past, and it was at this moment that she caught sight of Adaria standing a little way behind him, reluctant to stray far from the steps she had ascended. The Chancellor's voice immediately took on a more serious tone. "What's going on?" she asked, looking between Cyril and this unexpected guest. "I think we best come in, and I can tell everyone at the same time." Cyril motioned for Adaria to follow as he stepped into the room. Well, what choice did she have? "It what?" a short figure exclaimed from his perch on a round footstool beside the fire, clearly echoing what everyone else in the room was thinking. "It cracked," Cyril repeated for the third time. It was at this point that Adaria felt she should chime in. "I didn't touch it, really, only the base." The Chancellor turned to look at Adaria directly, her gaze assessing. "We believe you," she sighed, furling and unfurling her fingers around the staff in her hand. "Do we?" I'm trying to imagine how a goblin would speak, because this character is a goblin. So you just do that with your own head, okay? "Do we?" The question came from the shorter figure again, whose expression remained suspicious, if not downright incensed. "Yes, Tronk, we do." The Chancellor spoke more firmly this time. "Not that it matters." Adaria knew each of the figures in the room by name, even if she had never exchanged more than a nod of greeting with some of them. The 5 individuals currently in the room with her were what made up the official University Council, in charge of managing the centuries-old institution. There was Chancellor Elia, who had greeted them at the door. She was responsible for ensuring that every aspect of the university ran as smoothly as possible, and had dedicated her life to doing so. The other council members effectively reported to her. The short creature, who was looking suspiciously at Adaria, arms folded across his chest, was Tronk, the Goblin Representative. Goblins tended to live in the more remote mountainous regions of Albiyon, where the air was thinner and the temperatures cooler. For that reason, Tronk was one of only a handful of goblins Adaria had ever encountered. The goblins were long timekeepers of knowledge. Many of the most famous scholars Adaria had read had been from their numbers. They hosted their own library built deep into the mountainside where they lived, full of ancient goblin literature that Adaria dreamed of one day visiting. But the journey was an arduous one for a human like herself. It was tradition, therefore, for one of them to act as liaison between their people and the university. And Tronk had served in this role for as long as Adaria could remember. An observer may have taken the heavily muscled figure beside Tronk for a blacksmith or farm labourer based on his thick limbs and imposing size. This, however, was Angus, and he was the head librarian. The middle-aged man who had yet to speak up was striking, with his bright red curls, thick beard, and piercing green eyes. When Adaria had been a child, he had simply been another of the university's numerous library assistants, reporting to the previous head librarian, Morgana, when Morgana had retired a decade before, to travel beyond Albion's coastal borders and experience the world outside of this tiny island while she still had her libido intact, as she put it. Angus had been her natural successor. Slightly behind Angus's armchair stood an ethereal figure. There was no other way to describe the Lady Mirren. As much as she attempted to stand back from the rest of the group, she was the most visible presence in the room. Her silver hair had a mind of its own, weaving through the air intermittently, and her pale skin almost shone with a pinkish hue. She reminded Adaria of silk. Everything about her appeared almost painfully delicate, yet Adaria knew she was both the most powerful and the oldest being in this room. She was the university's tie to the fair folk, who had once sat adjacent to the throne, and to this day continued to hold great sway over the way in which Albion was run. In fact, the Lady Mirren occupied one of the few remaining hereditary seats in the Albion Parliament, it having been passed down to her by her father, who had been one of the last king's closest advisors. It was also a not-so-well-kept secret that she had once vied for the position of Chancellor herself. Then, of course, there was Cyril, a scholar in his 70s who oversaw the university's teaching department. As well as the foundling children who were raised there, the university also catered to the surrounding villages who did not have their own schoolmasters and offered any children the opportunity to be taught by some of the best minds in Albion. Cyril had been Adaria's own tutor growing up, and while he still ran a few classes here and there, he was predominantly responsible for the school's organisation these days. Adaria had never before appeared in front of the entire academic council at once. While she had grown up in the university, there was rarely cause for any foundling or day student to pay a visit to those in charge of the institution itself. Cyril was the only member she, or any of the others, had regular contact with over the years outside of casual encounters in hallways or study rooms. Now she felt each of their faces fixed on her. Unsure of where to look herself, she instead stared avidly at a silvery moth that was dancing on the window pane behind the Chancellor Elia. All because of that blasted egg. Cyril had explained to the room what had happened in the marble chamber as soon as they had closed the door behind them. Tronk had reacted the most violently, while Angus had looked almost as alarmed by the tale. Elia and the Lady Mirren had been harder to read, although Adaria was sure she had seen a trace of worry flicker. Don't spend this much time reading out loud. Flicker across the Chancellor's features for the briefest moment before disappearing again. None of which reassured her. Could this mean? Angus began before trailing off. It is waking up. Mirren's voice was barely more than a whisper, but it held the attention of everyone in the room. I believe Lady Mirren is correct, responded Elia. Surely not because of this girl, barked Tronk. She's nobody. Adaria frowned, but she could not reasonably disagree, so said nothing. That remains to be...
Tronk.
Tronk is great. I love Tronk. He's just sassy, okay? That remains to be seen, Elia turned to address Adaria directly. Do you have any idea what we're talking about, Adaria? Yes, Chancellor, I think so, she replied slowly, trying to keep her voice even. But you can't mean the egg is awake. That is exactly what we mean. But I thought it was a fossil. That's what we were always told, as did we all. But fossilized dragons' eggs do not begin to crack of their own accord. If you weren't aware, it is notoriously difficult to tell a barren dragon's egg from one that holds a living creature within its shell. This egg has been in the university far longer than I have, and that is saying something. In fact, from what I recall, the original artifact entry suggests it has been contained within these walls for more than 2 centuries. Not that this is any indication of age. It could have been held elsewhere for far longer. Nevertheless, for an egg to remain unhatched yet continue to hold the promise of life for even that long is unheard of. Naturally, therefore, it has long been assumed to be dead. This last word hung in the air whilst the rest of the room processed the implications behind the Chancellor's statement. It does appear, however, that our judgment and that of the scholars before us was too hasty. So I'm not in trouble? Adaria responded hesitantly. There was a lot of information to take in at that moment, but she could not focus on any of it until she had clarified her own position in this room.
Yes,
Depends on how you look at it, Trunk snorted, folding his arms across his small chest. You haven't done anything wrong, no, said Elia slowly. Adaria wanted to relax, but her body did not appear willing to assent to this request, and she remained a tight knot of tension, as everyone else in the room appeared to be waiting for someone else to speak. It was the Lady Mirren who broke the silence. A dragon has not been born in Albion in your lifetime, but I have witnessed their births in mine. Dragons do not rely on their mother's protection, and their eggs can be abandoned soon after being laid. Instead, the infants wait inside their shell until they choose to bond with the first creature they feel drawn to. It is only then that they hatch. She waited for this to sink in before continuing. I think I speak for everyone in this room when I say that, given the circumstances, we believe that there is a strong possibility that you are the creature this dragon has chosen to bond with. It takes an entire cycle of the moon for an egg to fully hatch, however, so we cannot yet be certain. Adaria stared at the Fey woman, blinking gormlessly, unable to speak. Perhaps it would be best to give Adaria some time to process what we have told her. It will also give us time to discuss how to deal with this situation as it stands. Elia stepped a little closer to Adaria, her expression sympathetic, before turning to address Cyril. May I suggest you show Adaria out and then return here with the egg, Cyril? Yes, of course, he nodded solemnly and gently placed a hand on Adaria's shoulder. We'll send for you shortly, once we've talked things over. By then you will probably have some questions of your own. Adaria nodded, unable to respond with words, and allowed Cyril to guide her back down the short hallway and away from the council. As soon as the door closed behind them, the voices inside picked back up. And as Adaria and Cyril walked away, she could make out the telltale sounds of an argument unfolding in hushed but animated tones. And that's the end of chapter 1. They're quite short chapters, I would say.
Which I also love. Like, there is nothing more frustrating than a book that you don't have any like reasonable place to leave it in. So I like the fact that it's like I could read a chapter on my lunch break and be satisfied by putting a bookmark in at the end.
Yeah, I find I turn the pages faster if chapters are quite short. It's 316 pages with 41 chapters. So they all range from about like 6 pages to 10 pages a chapter, I'd say, probably.
We love Adaria.
Oh my god, that was so like my mouth feels so dry.
You did so well though. I was completely engrossed. I could have literally sat here all night and just had you read to me. I would have been quite happy with that.
I did also notice that there was meant to be a comma somewhere. There was a full stop. So if you notice that in the first chapter, let me know. It's no going back now. It's there. That's our special secret.
I can't remember what author it was now, and it's going to annoy me, but I've got a non-fiction book on my shelf where I went to a signing, and it's going to really annoy me. She is a reasonably elderly woman who writes about fairy tales and the origins of them, and is very well known in the book community, and that's going to really annoy me now. But anyway, went to a book signing and she very fussily snatched the book off me and flipped to like page 23 and corrected a couple of punctuation bits and wrote on my book and then signed it and handed it back. And I was like,
oh my God, I love that. Okay, well, if I ever sign anyone's book, I'm going to correct that one.
Just fussily flip to the page and be like,
I love it. Thing, like, it really doesn't matter whether you are a massive author, a small author with a big publisher, a small publisher, or self-published. There is always a mistake. You know, there's no book that doesn't have a mistake. It's kind of fun, actually, and it's sort of like then it's something that often, like, I'm not saying this in terms of my book, but it's interesting because then it's used sometimes to, like, date editions and things, which is quite fun if you're like into antiquarian books.
I think it was Joe Abercrombie recently who was like, gets new book, opens proof of new book, looks at page, immediately finds error.
Like, yeah, it's such a thing. Like, that is so true. Oh, thanks, guys.
Like, people like Connor's loving the goblin voice. Like,
I know. Like, really have to Tronk down. Sometimes I feel like Tronk. Like, I feel like Tronk's a character I can identify with.
Tronk is every like grumpy, like elderly Scottish man that I've ever met who just speaks to you in permanent grumbles. There's never a sentence that doesn't have muttering in it. I love that.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. I love Tronk.
Chuntering. That's a very good Scottish word for you. Chunters on in the background to himself.
You didn't get any of it there, but some of my characters speak with a more Scots dialect in the book. But I hope in a way that is understandable to people who don't know Scots, but that may introduce you to a few random new words, which might be fun.
Yes. So. I love that, though. That's one of my favourite things about translated fiction is finding where the translator has decided to leave some of the original dialects in the book. And then I'm like, hold on. And you end up in like a Google hole.
Yeah.
I'm very excited by that.
Sometimes there's just no direct parallel.
So here's a question for you then. Who is your favourite side character? Now that we've met Tronk and Angus, who...
Tronk.
It used for me, I used to be like, it has to be, why can't I remember anybody's name today? The guy from The Martian. I'm like, just give me him and I'll be fine. Yeah, no, the guy in the actual book, the character, I was like, just give me him, we'll be fine. He's smart, he's funny, he likes the same stuff as me, but he's clearly smarter than me and I will survive. And now I'm like, no, just give me Angus. I'll be fine. Just give me Angus. He doesn't need to say anything. Just give me Angus.
A burly ginger librarian. It's so funny the amount of people that, like, so I've had people that have read the whole book and I've had people that have just read the first couple of chapters, and everybody loves Angus from chapter 1, and I'm like, he's barely in it. All I did was tell you he was a big ginger librarian, and everyone's like, I love Angus.
That's enough for me. You really didn't. Honestly, there needed to be no dialogue after that. I was perfectly fine with that.
It's so interesting though, like, as an author, it'll be to see who other people's favorites are. Like, my friend Jill was the first person to ever read this book, so I was really lucky because Jill read every chapter as I wrote it, which I think also helped keep me motivated. It was so wonderful having someone who was doing that and was engaging in the world with me. Just loves Calder. So Calder is one of Adaria's two best friends, and like the way Jill talks about Calder makes him seem even more real to me. It's amazing. It's so nice having someone love a character so much. I think my favorite character is the love interest or the dragons.
That's one of my favorite things about when a book really like hits the bookosphere and people go crazy for it, because it's like the little short pieces of fan fiction you get or the fan art, and when you see something that you've read come alive and to like other people, and the character very much feels like a full person who lives in my world, it will be really fun to see, like, if people write fan fiction about your book. There could be like a fan
that. Like, some authors are like, do not use my characters in your fan fiction, but like, I don't know if it's like maybe older authors feel that way, but like having grown up as part of the fan fiction like generation who spent like, I just think like I can also get it. Like, I think the only case in which I would find fan fiction uncomfortable is if somebody sort of de-queered something, if that makes sense. Like, if somebody tried to Yeah, like that's different. But like generally speaking, I think that's lovely. It's often a way people practice their own writing when they're younger. It's a way of engaging in worlds. Like it's so nice.
Yeah.
Like
and I can see authors' points of view if it's like, you know, I'm writing sequels in this world. Please don't send me anything so I don't get accidentally influenced or whatever. But please go ahead and write it. So I'll read them for you.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Well, I do know, I have talked about it. I have said it before, but I did see somebody else ask if it's a series, and it is a series.
Yes.
It's the first in. So the thing is, there's an option here of it being a duology or a trilogy, because basically I have a possible side plot that I'm trying to decide whether or not, and not side plot, but like an aspect of the book whether I'm trying to decide whether to incorporate or not. And if I did, it would have to be a trilogy, and if I didn't, I think it could be a duology. At the moment, I'm like,
really nicely into a comment that we've just got, actually, which is like, did you have the book completely planned before you started writing it?
Absolutely not. By the time I finished it, like I didn't finish it and didn't know what was happening. Like it wasn't like I didn't know what was happening one week and then finished it the next week. But when I started writing, absolutely not. I had no idea. I had characters in my head, I had themes in my head, I had a world in my head, but I didn't know where it was going.
I often say that, like, if I was finally going to sit down and write one of the many books that exist in my head, like I would have the Leanne laundry list of things like found family, haunted houses, you know, like that kind of stuff. I would have the list in my head going in, but that would be roughly all I had in my head. So I love that you can. It feels like you on the page. I don't know if that's just being a personal friend or if like everybody will get that, but I felt you on the page when I was reading this, and it was really like comforting. I don't know,
I don't comfort anyone. That's the best thing I just want to like, but like I do want to prepare people that like it's not like nothing bad ever happens in the book.
No.
I can't. There's no rape, there's no sexual abuse, there's no sexual assault. That was something that's like great if it's dealt with properly, but like it's hard to find fantasy that doesn't involve it. So it's just nice to have something that's like,
it was a random little line in that chapter, but I started wondering about what about Morgana.
See, Morgana is dead now, because like this is like Morgana was the old head librarian, but to be fair, like you could like in my head I know who Morgana is. She was like quite old. She retired like a few decades ago, like 2 decades ago, and then she went off already quite old and did a lot of traveling and enjoying her libido.
Girl.
That could be a story in itself. Do you know what I mean? The adventures of Morgana, ex-head librarian, who goes to the continent and like has a fun time. Because Albiyon is an island as well. It's an island country.
I feel very much like that's kind of like if Nanny Og had a bit more of Granny's consciousness and went exploring. That's what I feel like.
Oh my god, Morgana is definitely a Nanny Og. If someone wants to write a story about Morgana, have at it. Yes, she's definitely a Nanny Og, you're right. Like, it's funny how a character who only gets like one sentence, you know exactly who they are.
I have to say, like, when I go into books, I hate that thing as, you know, as a book reviewer and somebody in the community and stuff, I hate when I read a blurb on the back which is like, it's the next Rebecca or it's the next whatever, and I'm just like, please can we stop? But it is useful to people who don't read very often to like have a comparison. And I have to say that like Adaria gives me very Tiffany vibes. Like I feel like that kind of like secretly deep down a little bit no nonsense, but on top of it kind of permanently terrified character. Like that's very hard.
I can kind of see that. I feel like it's unfair because Terry Pratchett wrote every single character that could ever exist. So
that's good though. It's like you could. It's a nice comparison though. I feel like that's a comparison that's a compliment. Whereas like there are some comparisons, especially when you look at like the backs of YA books, that I'm like, really? Is it the Hunger Games? Is it?
I almost think like Morag could be a grown-up Tiffany.
Yes. I love that.
And like more, I could definitely be a grown-up, Tiffany.
Oh, the stories that you could tell. Will it be sold at Gaze the Word? So you did mention.
So how it works, because obviously this is a lot of stuff that I've had to learn, like going through the whole self-publishing process, is you publish it. Learning curve. So you publish it through a variety of different self-publishing like places. So it's self-published through Amazon, it's self-published through Barnes & Noble, it's self-published through Kobo, and it's self-published through Lulu. And Lulu, as what Amazon also does this, but I didn't opt in for it for Amazon. I did for Lulu. So Lulu offers global distribution. So what that means is booksellers and bookshops can stock it. They can order it from Lulu and stock it. But naturally, like getting the word out there about a self-published book, especially like yes, I'm an author already, but I haven't published fantasy before. Like, who doesn't have a demonstrated history is kind of difficult. So like, you know, you're relying on the booksellers investing in your book and believing in your book as well. And you also, like, they hear about so many books, you know, if you work in a bookshop, that like, yes, so now global distribution. Something I am thinking about doing is contacting certain independent bookshops, like Gaze the Word or queer bookshops, or other like maybe fancy bookshops, or maybe just generally Scottish bookshops, and asking them if they'd like to stock it. But they might not, which I would completely understand. I know, for example, Lighthouse at the moment explicitly say on their website they're not currently taking any more self-published submissions because they're working through what they've already bought. And like, that makes a lot of sense. So it's like one of those things where, yes, it's something that I would like work towards and hope for, but I cannot guarantee it. Although actually, if you flag your interest at a bookshop, that's more likely to get them to stock it.
That's definitely a good idea. I think like having worked in a bookshop, we're more responsive to people coming into our shop and being like, oh my god, do you have this book, than we were to the 52 proof copies that we had sitting in the staff room.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And I need to find out from a friend who's a bookseller to see if they can see it online, because I don't know if it's gone through the system yet. Because what Lulu will do is they then send the information to Nielsen Bookscan, which is a like service which collates all book data, and then booksellers can look at to find books to stock. And I don't know, like, it can take a few weeks for that to sync up. So it might not have even done that yet. And I have no way of checking, because Nielsen is way too expensive for me to sign up to. You need to own a publishing house or a bookshop to be able to afford to do that.
Yes, that's an absolute no. That is not an overhead that we will be investing in. It's not on the list.
Set up my own publishing house that exclusively publishes queer fantasy books. That would be great, eh? Oh, you could be my in-house designer. Let's do it.
I'll run the art department.
Yes! I love it. It's happening. Guys, send us books.
Yeah. Also donations.
Yeah, we might need to try this project.
Yeah, it might need to be like one of those like queer startup businesses where everybody's got a little investment. And
don't give me ideas.
Why not?
Because I can't control myself and I always have to do them all.
Yeah, but that's why I give you the ideas, because like if I have them, they'll just sit here and gather dust. But if you have them, there might be a chance that we do something about them. I love
you so much. It's so exciting.
It is so exciting watching people who like through this have bought copies. Like, and I have to say as well, like, when my little like stack of copies that I've ordered come through, and I've got like personalized Jean signature. Hey, girl, the Christmas presents are sorted. Christmas presents are sorted. Oh, there's a good question. Why did you decide to self-publish?
So it's a bunch of reasons. Because obviously, I mean, I say obviously, I'm just assuming everyone knows everything about me, which is very as you
just me.
I have traditionally published. I have one book that came out last year, which was a children's nonfiction book. I'm actually contracted at the moment for 2 other books. One of which will be coming out in 2020. What year is this? 2021. I've got another.
Girl, I do not even know what day it is. I have no chance to get the year.
I've got another children's book coming out in 2022, and one coming out in 2023. Although I've not written the one for 2023, I've just signed a contract for it. But I've written the one for 2022. So I do I obviously have traditionally published before, and I have worked in publishing as well, and I really, really like put a lot of stock and faith in publishing. Like, I think it's a really excellent place, but I also think it's a limited space. Like, traditional publishing's never going to cater to all types of books because it's a business. We're not like you don't want to know some of the stuff like I saw behind the scenes working in publishing. Like, it still has a priority of making money, and it's like difficult when you're trying to write something that is a little bit outside of there's a bit niche. And I knew my book was a bit niche, and it was also a passion project that I didn't want to massively change. Like, I didn't want to write a grim dark fantasy, and that's what's quite popular at the moment in publishing. And it just felt like my baby, and I kind of felt like, I have all these years of experience. Like, I'm not coming to this completely sort of fresh-faced and naive.
Romantic bonkers on, yeah.
Exactly. Like, I know how publishing works, and I was like, I do feel like I have a lot of the skills you need to self-publish already, which is very, very fortunate. I felt very connected to my book, and like it was my little baby, and I felt like I kind of just I wanted it to be fully mine and to be in control of it. Obviously, I've made changes based on editorial feedback. Like, it's not exactly the same book as what I finished. I really appreciate criticism and feedback, and I don't think anyone writes a book by themselves and it's perfect. You need to hear other people's opinions, but I still just I wanted my book, and I knew it was a little bit niche, and it was queer, and it was all those things, and I just felt like I wanted that full control over it, and I wanted it to be my little project. I also had a very bad experience with an agent I was signed with a couple of years ago, so I'm not yet quite over that. Which is a whole other story.
Yeah,
that also leaned me towards publishing for this project, because they were one of those agents that very much felt like, oh, there's so much forced diversity in fantasy, and I was just a bit sick of all of that nonsense and wanted to do my own little baby. We're not currently still in obviously not still signed with him. That's not a thing anymore.
Yes, but I think there are so many little stories that get you to the decision. Hello.
Oh.
Aw. There are so many little stories and little decisions that you make along the way that have tripped you into this. It's no one thing that's brought you to the conclusion that this is right for you. Because I think as well with any kind of self-publishing, you need to have a drive to actually get it out there. Because nobody's holding your hand to do this. I mean, you've got us cheerleading you, but ultimately it's you yourself. And the good grace of the people that you send it to and stuff like that, hoping that it spreads the word. But you have to be so determined. I watch so many self-published, especially fantasy romance authors who they are. It is a small business. It is 24/7. You are never off. So it's definitely, you can tell it's a passion project when somebody gets to the point where they have published something, because it takes so much to get there.
It's so interesting actually because you mentioned fantasy romance, because it is so easy to see trends within self-publishing and trends within traditional publishing. They're publishing very different things, and it demonstrates there's a market for both, but it doesn't traditional publishing does not publish a ton of dark fantasy romances. But that is so popular. People love it, they crave it, they buy it, and a lot of money gets pumped into that through self-publishing. But it's not something that traditional publishing has sort of got in a handle on. And it's also because, again, traditional publishing can only publish so much. Whereas there's certain things I personally wouldn't feel comfortable publishing a non-fiction book by myself, because I feel that I want the backing of a publishing house checking everything, and even though I'm an ancient historian, I have the experience, I've almost completed my PhD, I do have a background in research and antiquity, DK still have another ancient historian fact checked all my books. They don't just in that respect, that's really nice. So
Yes.
there's space for both. I feel like traditional publishing and self-publishing can coexist and be wonderful. And some of my favorite authors publish both traditionally and independently, like Grace Draven.
Yeah.
Grace Draven's one of my favorite authors, and she has self-published books and books with publishers. The same with Aliette de Bodard, self-published and traditionally published. Both work so well.
Gail Carriger, I mean, how popular were the Parasol Protectorate books? And she's pretty much been like, I have 42,000 spin-off stories. I'ma publish them myself.
Yes, Queen.
It's
I
great.
love it.
I love that. Yes. So we've got a couple of people saying that they've got a Nielsen's login. We'll keep an eye out for you.
Yes.
So that's exciting.
This is what's so good about being part of the bookish community.
I know, everybody's great.
Thank you.
Aww.
Oh my god, thank you for doing this with me, Leanne. I feel like I've absorbed your evening.
Oh, don't be silly. Like, you've got this evening and you've got tomorrow, but you're going to feed me tomorrow, so that's making up for it, right?
Yeah.
No, I'm delighted to be here. Yes, cocktails. No, I'm delighted to be here. Like, anything I can do to help to spread the word, because I love you and love you.
We should maybe take this opportunity to plug Leanne a little bit more, because Leanne is incredible, and I'm hoping she's got some props since she's in her office. If you don't know, like, this month isn't just the launch of my book, it's also the relaunch of Leanne's shop, because Leanne runs a wonderful shop, which if you weren't here at the beginning, you might not have remembered me mentioning, called Novel Menagerie. In fact, I should post a link in the comments. That's the easiest way to do, isn't it? On Etsy. It'll also be in the description box down below. And she sells wonderful, eclectic, bookish memorabilia. No, it's not memorabilia. How do you describe it, like, as a whole?
I say bookish ephemera. So, yeah. So there's a bit of everything. So the launch we've got some stationery in the launch. So we've got some Dark Academia notepads that are going to be in the launch. Oh, thanks. And we've got some, because the Dark Academia stuff went a little bit nuts. So we've also got some art prints, my friends. But of course, it's the bookmarks that everybody is here for. Let me find the bookmarks. So we have some, let me get it the right way up. We have some Peter Pan bookmarks that we're going to have this time. What else have we got? We've got some, so there's the Dark Academia bookmarks that we have this time with a quote from Secret History on them. We have got, because it is coming into September time, so we are once again returning to the spooky vibes. We have got, if I can get them, we have got pumpkin fabric bookmarks returning.
I'm buying a fabric bookmark as soon as they're launched, because I want like a really nice, this is my special bookmark, and I feel like that's what fabric bookmarks are.
I really love fabric bookmarks. So I have had so many people tell me that they don't take them out of the wrapping that I send them in, because they're like, I want to keep them pristine, and I'm like, please take the biodegradable packaging off and compost it and enjoy the feel of the fabric, guys. Please.
I know that feeling though. I definitely get that way about things sometimes.
And there's loads of stuff that isn't here, unfortunately. We've got more stationery. We have tons of Gilmore Girls merchandise is coming out, tons. Tons. I've been drawing Gilmore Girls stuff until I feel like I live in Stars Hollow. There's wooden pins, there's key rings, there's so much coming. I still have a bunch of enamel pins from my Kickstarter, which I should have been better with props. So we've got
I've got one
things. Yeah, so we've got enamel pins with bookish stuff. Where is my books and tea? That's the most popular, which is why I can't find it, because I keep selling out of it and not being able to.
Yeah, that's the one I've got.
So there's the dark version, but we've got the books and tea. Yes. And we've got a very grumpy cat who's now like, Mummy, would you stop crinkling stuff next to me? Yes, so there's a ton of Halloween-y stuff as well that's coming. There's I will. Shall I give you a preview? Will I give you a preview? Let's see. Can I find? Okay, so sneak peek specifically for your launch stream. I haven't showed any of the Halloween stuff. So here's one of the prints, which will be on About Mark as well. What we've got.
Oh my god, that's beautiful. You had that last year as well.
Witchy vibes. I brought out a really small mystery box last year, which had some.
I got the mystery box.
People went a bit crazy for it, so we have a lot of witchy stuff.
I think Kathy clearly needs one of your pins to match her tattoo.
Oh, I love that. There's Connor. There's tons of Luke Steiner stuff. There's bookmarks and stickers. Oh, and there's waterproof stickers this time because everybody kept being like, "I want to put it on my water bottle," and I'm like, "Okay, I'm gonna get some waterproof." So there's waterproof stickers this time around. Thank you for the plug.
Oh god, I know how much work you've been putting into it recently.
It's like every time Jean sends me a message, it's like 2 days until I drag myself above the fabric bookmark pile to be like, "Hello, did you need me? I'm here."
Oh my god, I have to. Sorry, just so this, I have to. Right, yes. I do, because I made a playlist on Spotify because somebody else asked me, and as soon as someone says something to me, I can't get an idea in my head, so I just go and do it. So I'll get the playlist.
This is how we bully Jean into doing things. We just drop the seed. And then Jean just runs with it. You don't have to do anything else.
How do I find the playlist though? And then I can put the link, because I do have some songs. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie and pretend I didn't listen to I See Fire a lot, but that's obviously a different book.
But I have listened to your playlist, and there are some Scottish classics on there which are so good.
So it's got a bunch of sort of Celtic music. My love is like a red, red rose. The version sung by Eddie Reader. It's a Robert Burns song. The version sung by Eddie Reader is just I feel sums up the emotions in the romantic subplot of my book. I love it. So okay, here is the playlist. Let me send it to you. There it is. I'll pop it in the description box as well. This video will still be here, so you can come back and get it. But
I saw a couple of people being like, when they have their books, they're going to come back and listen to you read the first chapter again, which I just think is the sweetest.
The mistakes I made.
No, don't say that.
When you're reading the book, you should listen to the playlist. I'm telling you, you should listen. There's a lot of songs by the band Celtic Women, who I love. They're an Irish band. They're amazing. We've got some Bob Dylan, we've got some George Ezra, we've got some Dick Gaughan, we've got more Eddie Reader, Bella Book and Candle. Oh my god, best song. We've just a bunch of different things. We've got some Fleetwood Mac, Miley Cyrus, bunch of random stuff.
Miley Cyrus was I got to it and I was like, but it works.
It does. Honestly, that's my favorite Miley Cyrus songs. It's because it's got more of a kind of magical country vibe to it. So
yes, I was very okay, we vibing. We're here.
I might add more to it over time, but yeah, that's my Spotify playlist. I don't even use Spotify, but I specifically went on Spotify to make.
Oh, bless.
I use Apple Music. I can't figure out how to make a public Apple Music playlist, which is what I use.
Yes.
Oh, I don't know. I'm going to put this in the link in the description. Playlist. And then we'll also pop in Leanne's shop. I'm just doing this all while I remember, because I'm going to fall asleep after this.
To everybody who is currently favoriting my shop. All of the notifications are popping on my phone. So thank you guys. That is the sweetest.
The problem is I can never spell menagerie.
The amount of people who also, including my mum, say it with a hard G and say menagerie, and I'm like,
Leanne's shop.
Thanks, girl.
Okay. All the links are there now. It's the thick. Okay, cool. I did it. I know technology.
You've done so well. You've done so well. You've survived your book launch stream. And I will be there tomorrow to virtual hug you over alcohol. It's all going to go good.
Oh,
thank you to everybody who came.
Thank you for coming and asking questions and buying the book and just like caring.
Yes, you guys are amazing. You never cease to amaze me, like how much you're there for us, and it's very humbling.
I know, and I do hope some of you enjoy it.
Oh, I'm sure. Right, no more of that self-depreciating nonsense.
I don't want anyone obligated to love it or anything like that, but I do hope it brings some joy to people in the same way that it's brought joy to me writing it.
Okay, so I am going to say that you're obligated to like it. And I won't hear any different. And if there's any like negative opinions, we do not see it. We do not see it. Don't bring it here.
Well, even if you can't buy a copy right now, it's still massively helpful if you like add it to read on Goodreads. That's still like fantastic.
Stuff.
I do want to make absolutely clear about this as well. It is in the description box, but in case someone didn't notice it, if you can't buy it right now, but your library uses Overdrive, recommend it to them, because I have made it available for libraries to purchase through Kobo. So like if your library has the Libby or the Overdrive app, which I think are the same company, you can recommend or request them to purchase specific books that they can then lend to their users. And I have made it available. So obviously, honestly, the idea that it could be in a library, even in an e-version, is honestly almost more exciting to me than the idea of it
being quite meta as well. Really, like it's quite meta considering the content of the book. Your book being in a library, like it's very meta. I love it.
I grew up in the library, like as much as I love bookshops and now buy a lot of books. Like I read mostly from the library as a kid, and like I'd be honoured if you requested your library to order a copy. Genuinely,
I'm so excited. Good things are gonna happen, girl. Good things are gonna happen.
Thank you for coming and being here, Leanne. Everyone, clap for Leanne.
I'll clap for me. We're both still awake despite the stress of individual things. We're both still awake and in one piece.
I think Chris is almost asleep.
Oh, precious boy.
He's just been reading Kafka in the corner.
I mean, that's a choice, my friend. That's a choice.
He's looking a mighty like Spencer Reid from Criminal Minds right now. And that honestly, particularly.
Honestly, we stand. We're keeping him.
He's been all shy.
Harry did appear at the door briefly and be like, and run away. Would you like a Harry appearance while I drag Harry?
Yeah,
Harry.
You do look a lot like Spencer Reid right now.
Please come hither. Your presence has been requested.
Just seeing
honestly, the face McNabb just gave me there because I yelled in his ear. Like, I hear a Harry on the stairs.
Bring Nimbus. Nimbus is Chris's favorite.
Oh, I think McNabb would be sad. You've been requested.
Hello.
Here's a Harry.
Congratulations.
Yeah. We'll see you tomorrow.
Yes. We're bringing baked goods.
I know, I hear.
Excellent.
I'm so excited. Shortbread is bland as well. Chris was just like, how, like, of course you have both thought to bake that. It's just so Scottish.
Yes. Like, naturally, the first thing I said was, we're bringing shortbread.
Oh, right, okay. If you want to see Harry now, we should probably go.
Yes, even the cat is yawning at us.
This was the important bit.
Oh, okay, we love you very much, and thank you everybody for coming and celebrating Jean with us, because she's very special and so is her book.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you just for all of your support, whether it's in buying the book or just like saying congratulations. It has meant so much.
Yeah, you're amazing. And we
I
will
am.
see you all soon when Jean is in the bestseller charts.
Woohoo!
I'm gonna go pass out from the adrenaline now.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.